Hi, this is Shaquetta Perry. If you're planning on purchasing a home and working with a real estate agent, the very first thing that the Real Estate Commission wants me to do is review their Working with Real Estate Agent brochure. This brochure outlines the relationship between an agent and their client. So there are three different ways that an agent can work with a buyer: as a seller's agent working with a buyer, as a buyer's agent, or as a dual agent. The seller's agent working with the buyer actually works for and represents the seller, even though they're working with the buyer to complete the transaction of purchasing a home. The buyer has waived their right to representation and has chosen to move forward in working with the seller's agent to complete the transaction. This happens most frequently if a buyer contacts a listing agent directly, or is working with an on-site agent, a new home sales agent at a model home, and has waived their right to their own representation and is moving forward with purchasing a home. It's very important to understand that this agent works for the seller, even though they're working with you to complete the transaction. The buyer's agent and the dual agent work for the buyer. The buyer's agent works exclusively for the buyer, and as a result, there are 6 key duties that we owe to you, our client: obedience to any lawful instruction, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable skill, care, and diligence. It's important to note that the seller's agent working with a buyer do not owe you these 6 duties because you are not their client. Dual agency occurs if you begin working with me as your buyer's agent and you become interested in one of my listing or a listing of my firm. The firm represents the buyer and the seller in that case, and so we must be fair in our dealings of that transaction. So confidentiality, accounting, reasonable skill, care, and diligence are still owed. Obedience, loyalty, and disclosure are owed. However, they are a bit clouded because we must be careful to be fair that we're not exchanging information that is not necessary, so that the confidentiality of the other party is maintained. We will discuss this information again in person so that I'll have an opportunity to answer any of your questions and have you acknowledge that you've received this information. So my question for you is, are we working together?